Hello and in. Welcome into the first Will's fifth quarter special YouTube channel live stream. March 3rd, 2019. This is history in the making on the fifth quarter sports talk show you enjoy and love. As I am now joining you not on our usual Facebook lives, but YouTube. So getting the hang of that still. We were able to get it luckily put together for tonight. We had some technical difficulties Friday, but no big deal. We're here 100% ready to share with you some fifth quarter sports talk you enjoy. And we have a lot of big topics to cover. The Illinois State Redbirds have the men's basketball team heading back to Arch Madness next week. We have a shortened episode of the Redbird Sports Update we're going to put together for that tomorrow. And we have the Chicago Bears to talk about. They are finally letting go of Cody Parkey and bringing in a new kicker. So that's definitely something Bears fans have been looking forward to for a while. That's kind of a big deal. And the question will be what kicker they find, draft, free agency. We're going to get into that as well. And the Chicago White Sox and the Chicago Cubs are in spring training. Bryce Harper is now a Philadelphia Philly. If you haven't heard, earlier this week, he signed a 13-year, $330 million contract to stay in Philadelphia for a majority remaining in his career in Major League Baseball. So that was something fans have been waiting to find out now that Bryce and Manny are signed. The Chicago White Sox took a good beating to the rival Chicago Cubs in spring training over in Mesa this afternoon, falling 13-4. So we're going to talk about both where those teams are at in spring training, what we can look forward to on the south side of Chicago and on the north side, because regular season's not that far. It's only a few weeks away, so we're going to get into stuff about that. And we have a Twitter pull up that is going to be taking part in the conversation tonight. We have different topics highlighted in that. So if you haven't taken a look at that, you're going to want to take a look at that. We're going to be looking at the results during this video as well. And we're going to talk a little ISU softball, a little baseball, briefly. But let's get things started. So we are going to be starting with the Chicago Bulls on this one. We're going to start with Chicago Bulls. They had a very historic game, not just in team history. They're like one of the 5 worst teams in NBA right now. One of those teams looking to get a lottery pick in the top 4, top 5 area of the upcoming draft this offseason. But they faced another team that was lower, right near them in the standings, the Atlanta Hawks. They went on the road to face Atlanta in Atlanta, Georgia. And this was a game a lot of Bulls fans didn't expect they would see end in this fashion. But the Chicago Bulls defeated the Atlanta Hawks in Atlanta just Friday night, a few days ago, 168-161, but in quadruple overtime. So it took 4 overtimes to decide the end of that game. Now that is what sports fans say is just incredible. That's usually the key word a lot of fans will use when they don't know, or even broadcasters don't know what word fits something. So they will use incredible. So that's what this is. It's incredible. Was just such a well-played game on both ends. I think Trae Young on Atlanta's side was probably the most successful offensively for Atlanta. He's pretty good defensively. I know people have said his shooting can be a little off sometimes, so it seems like a lot of people are seeing more of his shooting side and defensive side. They're seeing more of the defensive side that they didn't expect to see. So that's, I think, definitely interesting for fans to finally be figuring out. And I think for the Bulls, it was a really great game. They bring in Otto Porter Jr. around the trade deadline. Fans are like, okay, is this team rebuilding still? Are they retooling after a move like that? Because when you get a player like that in a trade or even a free agent move, it kind of can confuse your fans, the direction your team's going. And that's what a lot of fans have been feeling toward the Chicago Bulls this year. Like, they don't know for sure what is going on specifically. And It's definitely something to pay attention to the rest of the season. Not just the Bulls as an organization as a whole, the way Garden Packs run things, but the way the players are fitting. It seems like they really want to keep Robin Lopez from the reports we're seeing, and they want to, keep different players in the core of their roster, which is really important to the organization's future. You want to make sure you have the right team chemistry, and I think, in my opinion, Jim Boylen's doing a pretty good job. I'm not too opposed to it in terms of how he's running things with the team. It's a lot smoother, more of a tight ship than Fred Hoiberg would run. So I think it's going really well. And like I said, there's only 20 or so games left in the season. Bulls aren't going to make the playoffs, obviously. So they'll have time in the offseason to prepare whether or not they want to keep Otto in that rotation. But Otto Porter Jr., now that we're on the topic here, was one of 3 leading scorers for the Bulls in that game. So the Bulls then went to a record of 18-45 that night. They played Atlanta today in the afternoon, but they lost that 123 to 118 in Chicago. So that was today's game. But just looking at the box score, it was so impressive. Friday night's 4 overtime victory in Atlanta over the Hawks that the Bulls got. 31 points and 10 rebounds for Otto Porter Jr. in 55 minutes played total. 31 points, 17 rebounds for Lauri Markkanen, 11 points, 11 rebounds for Robin Lopez. But the key leading scorer for the Bulls that night was Zach LaVine, 47 points, 9 assists, 9 rebounds. Just incredible the way he's playing. The whole team's playing pretty well, considering the record, especially. If anybody could see the record, just looking at game by game stuff going on with the Bulls throughout the year, injuries and everything, those injuries were a key reason that a lot of that stuff happened to the Chicago Bulls in terms of record, how they play this against certain teams, and that's going to happen. You're never going to have a perfect season without a lot of injuries. So that's kind of something we expected could happen, but like I said, we're going to see what happens. And on the first debut live stream here on YouTube, Will's Fifth Quarter Special has its first comment. It's from Thomas Pappas, and he is asking if Gar and Pax should be fired. That is a question, Tom, that has been in the heads of all Bulls fans. That is on the minds of Bulls fans. What is going to happen with Gar and Pax? What is the origin of the future of the team with Gar and Pax? So you're not the only one asking that question. I've asked that question to myself numerous times. I'm asking it to myself right now, even when I'm on this YouTube live stream with all of you. So it's a curious thing, but it's still unanswered. It's one of those mysteries. Every team has connected to them. So I think it's in terms of where they're at right now, not something we have to worry about too much unless they suddenly don't get Zion Williamson or they trade the top draft pick out of nowhere for a player with bad contract history or bad contract connected to him. We'll find that out when it comes, of course. So that's the Chicago Bulls. They're in a pretty good place right now. Towards the end of the year, that was probably their biggest bright spot of the season, I think. Lauri coming back and playing really good. The trade for Otto Porter Jr. But I think this team will do well in the offseason. And here on Will's Fifth Quarter Special, we'll be covering when it comes up. Like last year, we covered the draft. We'll do like a draft special again, cover a lot of the pre-draft stuff, things like that as it moves forward. So we're now going to head into something that's coming up a lot closer compared to some of these other topics. It's not too far away. It's next weekend. And it is something a lot of Illinois State Redbird fans look forward to. Like I mentioned on the show, we still cover Redbird sports in the Redbird Sports Updates. So just kind of bear with me if you're not a Redbird fan. If you are, this is a chance to get into them a little more on the campus of Illinois State University. This is a really good men's basketball team program, a lot of other good sports programs down there. So if you're a sports fan, you like college sports, go check out Missouri Valley Conference stuff. It is mid-major sports. Some people don't like that. I think conferences are conferences. College sports is college sports. It's exciting, fun to watch, seeing what these players can do, and just supporting that fan base. It's incredible. So many great fan bases in college sports, especially Illinois State University. And Dan Moore is taking his team back to St. Louis next weekend for the Arch Madness tournament in the Missouri Valley Conference. So you got teams like Loyola, Valparaiso, Missouri State, Drake, Indiana State, and Southern Illinois, Carbondale, big teams like that are going to be testing the Illinois State Redbirds. And if you take a look at the team right now, they're playing pretty well, respectively. They're going into the tournament pretty soon with a record of 16-15 overall, and they have their last game before the tournament. It'll be Thursday against the Evansville Purple Aces in St. Louis, Missouri. So they'll play that game in St. Louis before the tournament, quarterfinals, then semifinals, and championship. So they're going to have to work their way up in this case. And this is a different spot than the Redbirds were in last year. They were like top 3 in conference standings coming into Arch Madness, but they didn't have the best of luck throughout the year in certain matchups. If we're just looking back into history when conference play started, just taking a look, they lost to teams like Valparaiso in their opener game by 2 points, lost to Loyola on the road by 3, and they lost in a big game that they could have won. That was a game they should have won if you're trying to get higher up in the conference standings. 85-65 loss at Bradley and Peoria. That's a tough one to swallow. Still going into the conference tourney. Lost 69-53 to Valpo in Redbird Arena. Lost by 1 point to Missouri State on the road. And then you had the continued losing streak going against UNI, Bradley, and Indiana State. So their victories after that were Missouri State. The big one was Drake, 67-60 just recently at home, one of their final home games, and they beat Missouri State 65-57. But the team to watch has to still be Loyola. I'm definitely paying attention to. I've heard a lot of things about this Drake team this year, playing really well. Shout out to Julie Martin at Illinois State University. WZND works TV10 as well. She has a cousin that plays for Drake, so I'm sure if she sees this, she's probably wondering why we're talking about Drake, because we're ISU fans on the show. But Julie, hope you get through the tournament okay. I know you kind of have a split allegiances during that time, so best of luck there. But the Redbirds have a good roster still going into this. You look at last year's team, and this was kind of my opinion of it. A lot of people saw Arch Madness differently going into it. Like I mentioned, the Redbirds were like top 3 respectively going into it. But just taking a look at the roster, I like the depth a lot better in terms of not just, loyalty to the team. Like the chemistry is real gelled pretty well. Some of these new guys that came in, transfers, freshmen. But I felt like that as a whole, this team this year was a lot stronger in terms of shooting ability, consistency, defense. I know was definitely streaky in certain games. That's something a lot of Redbird fans were surprised by this year, because Dan Muller always prides himself on, defense, strong defense, and, just doing it consistently, because that's how you beat really good opponents, is consistent but strong defense. And that's what I think that team could still do. There's no doubt in my mind, but I think there's doubts in fans' minds about what we're going to see in conference play, just looking at the records. And, guys like Phil Fain are obviously the key players Redbirds are watching for. Keyshawn Evans. Zach Copeland's one that's really emerged this year. The junior will still have another successful season, I believe, next year, but he still has time even after his first Arch Madness in uniform for the Redbirds. So I think, players get a little spooked their first one, but I feel like he's a seasoned player. The way he plays, really good. I'm really impressed by Josh Jefferson, of course. He's had a pretty good season. Ray Adawu is a freshman that I think has a lot of promise. You think about, Phil Fain's a senior, Malik Yarbrough's a senior, and William Tinsley's a senior. So you're wondering what's going to happen to some of these guys. But you have, guys for the future. Taylor Berninga and Dedrick Boyd from Eastern Kentucky is another name to pay attention to. Matt Chastain from Leroy, Illinois, who is doing a very good job for the Redbirds this year. He started out the season with just a bench role, part-time starting here and there. Dan Muller giving every player a chance to play a little bit in the starting role in certain games. But Chastain's just come out of nowhere in the conference season started, and that was when he broke out as a Redbird, in my opinion. His defense is something I believe is his strongest suit for sure, which is important in basketball. If a player could shoot, you also got to have strong defense. To me, I'd rather be the guy that has a better defense and still a decent inside shot or hook shot or whatever shot you want to use. But Ray Adawu is a guy that, and we saw this with Elijah Clarence last year, when he started playing more minutes for the Redbirds when he first came to Bloomington Normal in the Missouri Valley Conference, he didn't show much offense at first. And he showed more defense, just showed good passing, to his teammates and being part of that passing game, developing a shot in Dan Muller's offense. That's what we saw from freshman forward Ray Adowu this year when he started out. But, in the last few months, throughout the latter part of the season to this point, he has really showed his offense. And if you look at the game where they played Drake, that was a big game. The other big home game a lot of fans will remember coming into the conference tournament next week, which is a big one. If the Red Birds are able to climb back up to the championship and maybe by surprise Loyola's still there. So that would be kind of a rematch of last season's championship in St. Louis. That would be interesting for sure. But if you look at the matchups, Ray Adowu, I believe, had just about 13 points against Drake, which is probably one of the biggest point totals we've seen from him in a game, like consistently. And from what I've heard down on the campus, I talked to, as we mentioned, we stay in contact with news and sports reporters at 103.3 WZND, the campus radio station in Illinois State. Great station, great reporters. They do a great job there. I did that job for a while when I was a student there as well, so I have a lot of respect for that group of young people in radio. And they talked a lot about Drake. We had Hector Carrion on for the last River Sports update not too long ago, and that's what he touched on a lot was Drake. That was a big game coming into that game before they played that game, the way Drake's played. And he hit it right on the nail. You look at 18 points for Nick McGlynn, one of their guys, 13 points for Murphy. Ellingson got 11. Wilkins got 9. But if you look at the Redbirds, the shooting's not bad. It's pretty well spread. But if I look at the scoring right now, a lot of the solid points in that game came from 4 key players. And it seems like the Redbirds do better in matchups or even close losses when their points are more shared. Guys like Gassman, Chastain, Hines got a really good 3, but he seems like he's really good passing the ball around when he needs to, and he's not shooting the 3 too well at night. And that's what I'd like to see. But Redbird men's basketball, we're going to get into it with a special Redbird Sports update this week. We have a faculty advisor at Illinois State University, works with WZND, one of the faculty heads there. He's been a follower of the show since its start, a supporter of it, and we had to find the right time to fit him in for an episode. I wanted to make sure I picked the right time. He spent time as a student at Illinois State, so he knows a bit about the past and current of Missouri Valley Conference and the tournament itself, Arch Madness. So I wanted to be able to include that pre-Arch Madness. So we have Steve Cease, faculty advisor at WZND at Illinois State University. He will be making his debut on the Fifth Quarter Sports Talk. We're interviewing him tomorrow, so we'll be bringing him onto the show for the first time. I'm very excited for that. Steve is somebody that knows a lot of sports very well and talks about it with a good, unbiased opinion. Is very passionate about Redbird sports, and so am I. So we kind of, 2 peas in the pod in the show like that. So we're very excited to have Steve on. We're also going to try and get another episode put together this week on certain topics, and we'll get that set out. So that's what we're going to have in Redbird Sports. We have the softball team that is playing on the road still. They are 5-15 overall. Shout out to their pitcher, Morgan Day, who's a friend of the show. Hope you guys are having a good time over there, and keep playing good softball. So shout out to Morgan Day, Coach Fisher, and her staff. Day's a good pitcher for them, and they got a pretty good young team over there. But they lost 2-0 this morning, 9 a.m. In Baton Rouge, Louisiana, to ranked number 16 Indiana, and they beat Indiana yesterday at 2:30. They lost to LSU yesterday as well, 6-2. So they have coming up. They have another tournament next weekend. So they have 2 games Friday, 2 Saturday, and 1 Sunday. Two Sundays. So they have 6 games. 2 of them will be played in Miami, Florida. But then they go to Boca Raton, Florida, for 4 more games. So they're kind of in their tournament phase right now, as well as Illinois State baseball. And the baseball team's doing really well, from what I've heard. With the coach that came over, former pitching coach at Purdue, is doing a pretty good job over there. So shout out to Illinois State Sports. Like I mentioned, we will have it on the Redbird Sports Update. And pay attention to our Twitter page as well for Redbird Talk as Arch Madness comes closer. Now we are heading into the Chicago Bears. Now, This is the part in the season where people are like, okay, when are the free agents going to sign? And that's coming up pretty soon. Right now we're just waiting to see what players do or do not get tagged. And the two players we're watching for on the Bears to get tagged, if possible, or if Ryan Pace decides we want to give him a longer few-year deal, long-term contract, Adrian Amos and cornerback play strong in the nickel position for the secondary of the Bears in the past up to this point, Bryce Callahan. So those are two names you really want to pay attention to. Jordan Howard is shockingly in the trade rumors. I'm really surprised about that. Him and Tariq Cohen make a really good duo on the Bears. But it seems like Ryan Pace might want to find a different running back that fits more of Nagy's skill set. But I kind of disagree with that situation because I feel Jordan Howard is still has a really good chance to fit into that offense. He's only played with Matt Nagy's offense for about a year. Usually veterans take a tiny bit longer, like we saw in Atlanta with Kyle Shanahan and when they had Devontae Freeman and Tevin Coleman. It helps if one of them catches it like Tariq Cohen did, caught onto the offense really well with the rest of the players, receivers, Mitch, O-line. But Jordan Howard, I think, should still be given the opportunity this year. Like, give him, a decent amount of weeks to get, used to the offense more before you consider trading him. Maybe like trade him on draft night if you're serious about moving him, get a pick out of it. But there's a lot of interesting running backs. And the one that's really interesting to me is Bryce Love out of Stanford. He's one of the players that has been mentioned in terms of who the Bears, have talked to. And they have the opening interviews at the scouting combine that's taking place right now. And the thing, a lot of teams will talk about is how the coaches, obviously, and to the GM. And I think Ryan Pace approaches it really well. I have a lot of respect for him as a general manager in the National Football League because he doesn't just run things the right way, but he also is, not giving away too many of his ideas or hinting at it too much. And we see a lot of GMs in sports do that sometimes, which doesn't really help their team sometimes if they're going to get a player or trying to draft a player a certain way, because that could easily hints to teams to make a trade, before your team does. So just kind of looking at the running backs, there's a lot of combine running backs right now that are really talented. And we just saw a report from earlier today that's saying the free agent buzz for Bryce Callahan is not looking too well, but I think that's going to rev up. He's a really great player. So I think the Bears will have some competition for Bryce Callahan. But on the safety side, if you think about it, I do not believe it's going to be hard if Amos does not resign with the Bears. I have a feeling he might go to the Jets or another team that's seeking safety. I think would be the destination to watch though would probably be Denver. Just because his former defensive back coach left with Vic Fangio from Chicago to Fangio's new head coaching job in Denver. Ed Donatel left with Fangio to go to the Broncos, and I think the Bears are still in really good shape. You got a guy, Chuck Pagano. He's got connections like how Fangio did with free agents, how we saw Aaron Lynch come to the Bears last year. Those connections really help a team. And I think Chuck Pagano has a lot of really good connections, when he was a head coach with the Colts. Spent some time with the Ravens, which, if you look at the free agent list right now, there's guys, yes, Terrell Suggs is an older player, but he'd be a really good veteran to add to this team of young players, a guy that's had experience, but also, they got some good linebackers in in terms if you look at Baltimore's free agents coming through to this free agent class upcoming pretty soon, that's something to watch for. And apparently the Bears are not just going to be hopefully looking for free agent kickers, to talk to, try and bring into the team. They're looking at a kicker a lot of teams believe will be one of the best kickers coming out of the draft. They're making a really interesting comparison to him, calling him the next Stephen Gostkowski. Not the Stephen Gostkowski. He's pretty close to Stephen Gostkowski, but Janikowski. And both those kickers are really great. And his name's Matt Gay. I think I've seen a lot of tape on him throughout the this past college football season. The guy can really kick the ball well. But the thing I always pay attention to when I watch a kicker in whether it be high school sports, collegiate sports, or professional football level, you really got to watch the consistency of the player. And I think Ryan Pace is in an interesting situation. Yes, they did do good by the team and the organization, leaving Cody Parkey out of the future, which I think was probably the best first move they can make officially in the offseason. That's probably the best thing you could do, in terms of, the team, but also keeping that morale with your fans. And the Bears, just looking at some of the players, there's a lot of different players in the draft they can go for. And yes, they do only have their highest pick at the third round, but Ryan Pace has always struck gold in the draft recently. He's gotten guys like Cohen, Howard, Eddie Jackson, and so many other great players from rounds 3 to round 7. And that's what I love about the NFL draft. In terms of the last few years, the way the class has been, in terms of depth in different positions, a lot of depth earlier in a draft has been a quarterback, wide receiver. That's always the classic, you know, standard that we've seen earlier in drafts. But now it's been more defense and O-line, which I think for the league is really great. And the Bears have a strong O-line. They brought back Brandon Massey, a lot of those different players that they needed to keep. They already took Terragat, got rid of Deion Sims, so they're going to need another tight end. But they have a lot of really good players on this team already. And Ryan Pace was excited about this. We heard in the interview Peter Schrager had on Good Morning Football with new Bears Coach of the Year, Matt Nagy, how this is a team for the first time in a long time, probably since before 2010, where this team does not have a lot of holes to fill. But last year they did. They took care of it. That's why they have a certain amount of cap space right now. But if you think about it, this team is in a better place than you could ever hope to be right now. This is a team that is primed and ready for the Super Bowl. Matt Nagy keeps his players not just held accountable, but he has a very good level of discipline and non-discipline. So I like the way he carries that standard. The Bears are going to be in really good shape. Bryce Love is a name to watch. There's a running back out of Texas A&M that the Bears have been paying attention to. They say he has some comparisons to Kareem Hunt. You could tell the Bears are a little bit down about Kareem Hunt going to Cleveland. But Utah's Matt Gay and LSU's Cole Tracy are now being reported as kickers the Bears are looking at. Also, Chicago Bears defensive line coach Jay Rodgers has received the 2018 Defensive Line Coach of the Year award during the NFL Combine. So congrats to the Bears defensive line coach for that award honors. And an interesting headline just to finish the Bears part of this YouTube live stream is in the XFL, a newer football league they're trying to start here in the U.S. One of the newer head coaches in the Tampa Bay team they're forming is somebody the Bears have been used to in history, is former head coach Mark Trestman. So that's definitely interesting at the press conference that Tuesday. But this is how I'm going to leave it in the Bears portion of this. The hunger that's in our guys' eyes, you can't make that up, is quoted by Matt Nagy when asked how the players are feeling after losing to the Eagles by that one point, the double doink Cody Parkey kick. No Bears fan will ever forget in the future. I'm sure that'll always be something Bears fans remember, just like the Cubs with Steve Bartman. And the Bears, as we mentioned, have the offseason starting. We here at Will's Fifth Quarter Special will keep you posted moving forward through the rest of the draft combine, everything else. We keep you posted every step of the way just to make sure you're informed on what goes on with the Chicago Bears organization that I believe has a bright future coming in to 2019 and moving forward. So we're going to head into spring training talk. That's how we're going to finish out the show tonight, and we're going to start with the White Sox. So the Chicago White Sox played the Chicago Cubs today. The White Sox have a respectable record of 3-6 right now in spring training. Spring training records to me don't really matter too much. It's something you pay attention to is the players. And if in the White Sox case, they have a lot of young players in this organization, major league roster, minor leagues, and that's something you pay attention to more a majority of the time. So Daniel Palka left the game on the 24th, and we hope he's going to come back. So, he's a key player the White Sox will have to pay attention to in terms of his recovery. And Moncada at third base. That's something we're going to cover a lot in the next episode where we cover the White Sox on the podcast is Moncada at third base. And, that's a move I thought should have happened sooner than after this past season. I thought he was always better suited for third compared to second. But at the time, the White Sox were going for Manny Machado. They lost out to the Padres on him. If you're just finding out about Machado, hopefully you've heard about it a little while back, but I'll update you anyways on it. Manny Machado signed a 10-year, $300 million deal a week or so ago to join the San Diego Padres organization, and an infield that includes Eric Hosmer. It'll probably include Luis Urias over there. They'll have at second base, and former White Sox prospect Fernando Tatis Jr. So we have a comment from Tom. What do the Sox do after not getting Machado? That's a good question. I did have my heart set on Machado, but to be honest, I felt Bryce Harper before he went to the Phillies was a shot for the White Sox over Machado, just because if you look at the batting orders of winning organizations in history, they have a good even amount of right-handed batters and left-handed batters, without question. That's a good way to confuse pitchers, but you also have maybe a switcher or two, the way that's developed in the league over the years. You have a good blend of bats. And the White Sox, even before this rebuild started, had a lot of right-handed bats. And if you look at the batted hands players in terms of White Sox prospects use, Luis Robert is a right-handed batter. Eloy Jimenez is a right-handed batter. They don't have a lot of left-handed batters coming up through the organization. They have good left-handed bats, but they're not coming through yet. And if you have a lot of right-handed bats, that's going to be tough on the organization in terms of when they go and trade for players or sign premier free agents. It's going to make them have to be more selective to find left-handed bats, and that's going to be really tough. So if you can find left-handed players right now, in free agency, there's a lot of guys left, trades, that type of stuff. That's what the White Sox need to pay attention to. And I think this team's in a really good place if you look at the prospects, even not getting Machado. To answer Tom's question, Moncada at third is probably the best thing to happen after they didn't get Machado, because Moncada at third base, Timmy stays at shortstop where he belongs. You leave second base open for Madrigal. That would have been the roadblock had you gotten Machado. Well, where would Tim Anderson play, second or third? Where would Moncada go, and where would Madrigal go? Because I think that's going to be a really strong infield going into the future. Just looking at the draft, now it's obviously a whiles away for the MLB draft. We'll cover it when it comes up. But there's a player in, when you Google stuff, you find out a lot of different connections in mock drafts. The White Sox have been connected to Andrew Vaughn, who is a first baseman. That will be coming up in the draft. They have a top 3 pick, so that's my dream target when that comes up. But we're going to take a look at the scoreboard of the game that the Chicago White Sox fell in today against the Cubs, 13-4. So the winning pitcher today was Yu Darvish. He got his first win of the spring in 2019, and that's a big key plus for the Cubs. Not just getting the win in spring training there against your rival White Sox, but seeing a guy that took a lot of time to recover last year do really well today. And if you take a look at Yu Darvish's stats, he had a good few amount of strikeouts today. Didn't give a lot of runs away. The Cubs only gave up runs in the fourth to the White Sox when Abreu got the home run. 2 more runs the White Sox scored against the Cubs in the fifth. And the final run the Sox got today against the Cubs was in the 8th inning. So that's the 4 runs that the White Sox got against the Cubs with the Cubs. And these are 2 players I don't like for the White Sox bullpen moving forward. I know we had Don Cooper on the show. He has a lot of confidence in each pitcher, and I love that. I know I do as well. But the only part I disagreed with a teensy bit is Aaron Bummer and Juan Minaya. Juan Minaya and Aaron Bummer are not the best relievers for the White Sox, I believe. I don't think their age currently fits with long-term. They're 27, 28. Bummer's a little bit younger, but they're not consistent. We've seen them at the major league level with the team last year. They didn't do well in game situations. So, yes, they do have a chance to develop more, through the latter part of this rebuild when we're contending, but I don't see them with the major league club. And yes, Kelvin Herrera did kind of have a rough bout today, but he's coming back from a foot injury. You trust the veteran. He's one of the best, probably, bullpen pitchers I've ever seen in the AL Central when the Sox have faced one of those opponents. Unless you think of Wade Davis, but he's no longer in the AL Central. But Zach Burr did pretty well. Fry had a rough bout, but Manny Banuelos gave away half those runs, though, as well. 2 earned runs, 4 walks, and 2 runs scored off him. So I do not see Banuelos being that 5th starter. Now that you brought in a guy a lot of fans are excited about, I think they should be excited about him. He's a very seasoned veteran in Major League Baseball in his pitching career. they got Irving Santana on a minor league deal. That was a really good move for the organization. After you're not getting Machado, you're moving on. And Rick Hahn said it smartly after that. He said, we're not going to just waste that money somewhere on any given player. Like, some contending teams, I'm not going to name team names specifically, but the White Sox are smart. Now, of course, Kenny Williams is the one a lot of fans will put the blame at, and I put a slight blame at Kenny Williams. He's done a good job for the Sox in history, but he's definitely going into the books for some boneheaded moves. But obviously the one with Tatis is on Rick Hahn, but Rick Hahn, it needs to be more the voice, and that was something just to give credit to David Kaplan and his show there. They they talked about how the White Sox could have done certain things better and everything. And if you think about it, with the White Sox, you have good opportunities even if you don't get those two top free agents. You can bring back Chris Sale in a reunion to the rotation next year, which I think would be the best signing for the White Sox. I'm sure Chris would love to come back to Chicago. He always talked about how much he respected the organization and enjoyed the city of Chicago. And he's a White Sox icon. That would be kind of a homecoming fans would be excited about when they get closer contention with those young kids. I think he would be a good veteran pitcher. A lot of people are saying the Sox might have a shot at Keuchel or Gio Gonzalez right now. Now that those guys are still available, Craig Kingle, save your money, White Sox. Save the money. You got a guy that can play third in Moncada right now. Maybe go get a veteran third baseman. I think would be really good. Yes, you do have Yolmer, but get like a veteran out to join Yolmer in that utility depth role of second, third base to help out the young kids. And that's kind of what I think about the White Sox. I think it's going to be challenging for sure. And the question will be when these guys are playing together, how can they continue to develop together? That's a roadblock a lot of teams have historically faced, in rebuilds. The Cubs have had that a little bit. They've had so many players, infield, outfield that mesh well, but also, how they play in the major league level. And we have some comments I have to catch, so I guess I'm just having so much fun talking all this stuff. There's a lot to cover. We have somebody say, my dad, Brian Farrell, saying, play the prospects. I agree. The question will be when some of those prospects come up, and I think Dylan Cease is going to be a little bit delayed this year, sadly to fans' chagrin, just because a lot of people understand that Dylan Cease needs to wait. We don't want to have a Kopech Part 2. We can't afford to do that if we're trying to definitely set contention for 2020. Maybe possible wild card this year, depending on how the standings go. The Central's pretty wide open, I think. In terms of, if you think of Cleveland, they made a lot of moves. They lost a lot of their key players. Almost traded Kluber, which I think would have definitely given the Sox an opportunity in the division, whether or not they got Machado or Bryce Harper. But just to answer that question, I think the prospect will play. We'll definitely see Eloy come up. And it's connected to that service time thing that Chris Bryant had going on. So that's kind of an understandable thing with Eloy. Sox wants more control of him. We'll probably see the same thing when Luis Robert comes up, which I don't think is too far away either. The kid is just having an incredible spring training right now. A few days ago, getting that big 3-run homer against the Rangers when the Sox beat Texas in spring training. But to answer that question, definitely play the prospects. The division is, as I mentioned, Brian hit it right on the dot before I got to it, up to grabs. 85 to 90 wins could win and clinch the Central. I believe that as well, but I kind of have the Sox more to 75 to 80 wins just because we don't know for sure how the pitching is going to go with Irving at fifth, or whether or not we'll have Manny there, Banuelos, or Dylan Covey. We don't know what's going to happen with that. We don't know how Moncada's strikeout rate's going to lower. There's still a lot of questions, but not too many bad signs. There's a lot of good signs for this White Sox team that is going to put fans that, left the team, maybe went back to the Cubs after the Sox were in the rebuild and, were bandwagon fans of the Cubs. They'll come back to the South Side. They're going to miss the South Side. And if you're the White Sox right now, yes, the fans are hitting up Twitter, pissed about Machado and Harper. That's just because I feel like they did enough, but they could have done even more just to bring in certain players and to uh, carry a good identity for the organization. Yes, they won't be cheap to free agents, but the question is now to fans, can they finish the contract situations? Can they make the moves? Can they, make the moves count to fans? Can they have fans continue to trust that the team's doing their due diligence to get a move done or to get close to a deal done or, making those visits? That's going to be the thing that fans have issues with. That's going to be in the topics for a long time. And we have another question about the White Sox. It's the one fans have been talking about since the trade was made. When will Eloy Jimenez debut for the Chicago White Sox? Tom is getting a lot of good questions in. We appreciate that so far. And we're going to get, before we go into the Cubs and finish off this debut YouTube live stream, tell us what you think about it. This video will be up after we finish this as well. So definitely check it out on our YouTube channel, Will's Fifth Quarter Special. So, check it out when it's up and everything after we finish this video tonight. Tell us what you think. We want to hear what you think about the continued access you'll have on this YouTube channel. We're going to do a lot of different videos like this live stream. We're still going to do our Facebook Lives, probably not too much in the future. YouTube seems like it works better. I just love the way it's set up here. But, we'll have the episode coming up with Steve Cease. We're going to have another big episode covering other stuff. We're here for you. This show is your voice. The YouTube channel is just part of that. The show episodes are just part of that. The Twitter, as we mentioned, the Twitter poll is one way to share your sports voice, but we also have the Twitter page itself. You use the hashtag Will's Fifth Quarter Special, all lowercase, one space, putting it together, and you just kind of use that to, just to share your voice. And that's what a lot of sports pages have, but some don't have it completely. Is you can share your voice, but sometimes it's hindered a little bit. Maybe you have to say it a certain way. But on this podcast, that's not how it's done for you, all the listeners, viewers, supporters. And this video is obviously going to be seen by people that haven't heard of this show before. So definitely check out the Twitter at William B. Farlow. And, people are casting their votes on the Twitter poll. But what I want you guys to do is the topics we're talking about tonight, when you see this video, whether you're tuning into the live right now or you see it after it's done, or you listen to the episodes after this, checking out everything we have so far, ask yourself, if I want to use my voice, how can I put it on the Twitter? So you're going to use that hashtag Will's Fifth Quarter Special, top or bottom. Share with us about a game. So the Sox got nailed by the Cubs today. How do you feel about it? How do you feel about Eloy's debut? What do you think about this or that? You find an article you like or you're interested in, link it to us with the hashtag Will's Fifth Quarter Special. Link us your thoughts, sports movie moments, anything. We want to hear it every step of the way. The listeners have just been so supportive. You guys have been so supportive of the show since it started. We appreciate that. Keep that up. We love seeing that. It's just helping make this show even more better, more fun for me. So we appreciate that, and I look forward to seeing how that Twitter will continue to improve. Thinking of the Twitter, we are going to go to the live results, and it looks like there's pretty good totals right now if you look at it. Just taking a look at the Twitter poll to make sure I have it set correctly. And if you think this video is going pretty well, you like how we're doing a live stream on here instead of Facebook Live, tell us that. We want to hear your feedback. And we have somebody that expected a shout out. He was hoping for one. And I have to mention in between stuff, we just have so many supportive comments here. A majority of it's been Bears and, mostly White Sox, which is what I like. I'm personally a White Sox fan. But given that we are in Boston baseball, Sox Cubs talk on here, the person that has been on the show before, he was on last year, episode 8 as our co-host, back when I was at ISU still. Blake Haas was on the podcast. That's when we interviewed Dan Muller pre-Arch Madness last year, but we're doing a pre-Arch Madness with Steve Cease this year, WZND's faculty advisor for the Redbird Sports Update. And Blake is kind of divided with this show. He's not a big Sox fan. He's not a big Cubs fan. He's a Redbird fan, and he's a Cardinals fan. And I have a lot of respect for that. Cardinals are rivals, Cubs, and everything. But I remake the show set up a little bit. That's why you guys hear some card stuff, just to make sure it's catered to different audiences, brings in more of a demographic when we do that. But Blake is somebody that is been supportive of the show. He does some work at WJBC, and his Packers, finalia we don't understand. Bears fans, we kind of have that divide with the Packer fans. So, he's somebody that has been supportive of the show. There's so many co-hosts, and if you saw that announcement video we made before the Facebook Live, even was rescheduled Friday, there has been so many supportive, fans of the show. The co-hosts have just brought their own voice and, brought their personalities, and it's helped give the show its own personality. So that's what I love to see. And, guys like Hector, my dad, Kevin, and Alex Dolinar, we're going to try and get Alex back on pretty soon. He's got some school stuff going on right now, so we're working on that. But Blake Haas is being promised this. I promised this to him before. He will be one of your other upcoming co-host. We're probably going to do a separate episode with him on it, talking a little. I want to go more in depth on spring training with baseball. Just the way the free agents have been. We're going to do an episode more in depth on that. And there's also an episode I'm going to mention. I've been planning for a little over a year for this show's future and episodes that are put together. It's going to be put together a certain time. So when we have it planned out, when it's going to come out, we'll release the date on the next YouTube live stream or during an episode. We'll figure that out still. It'll be an episode that recaps a lot of past episodes. So it'll have a lot of clips like you heard in that new opener we debuted in the announcement video just this Wednesday. So we'll share that as well. So we're heading into the final part of this video, the first YouTube live stream of Will's Fifth Quarter Special. It's been so much fun doing this tonight. Definitely like this more than the Facebook Lives. It's more interactive, and I think it's just going to grow even more. So once again, we appreciate that tonight. We are going to get to the Twitter poll right into the Cubs. It leads us right into the Cubs talk, and we're going to go right into it here, right at the nitty-gritty. So if no one saw this on our social media pages, it's still up there to read it if you want to read what the Twitter poll was. It just finished. It's a split one on two of the categories, actually. So the question was, and this was courtesy of Brian Farlow, a co-host and supporter of Will's Fifth Quarter Special. He came up with this idea, sent it to me before tonight's YouTube live stream. He thought it would be a really good thing to debut on here, so we appreciate that. What is the sport you're most excited about this week? Share your reason why in a tweet on our page at William D. Farrell with the hashtag Will's Fifth Quarter Special. So you can still do that. You can share your thoughts on why people voted this way, and if you wanted to vote, you can cast a vote in your own tweet at William D. Farlow. So the four options we created were Major League Baseball spring training, Redbird Arch Madness, the Bears getting a new kicker, or the Bulls tank mode. And we got a retweet on it as well. We got a few votes out of it. We got a total of 6 votes at the final. We posted a little bit closer to this video, so I feel in the future we'll definitely get some more votes like we have before. We've actually seen some that have told the 56 votes on these Twitter polls, so we appreciate that support on it. Keep going on the Twitter. Keep hashtagging Will's Fifth Quarter Special. Sharing your sports views with it like we do on the show here. Movie moments, any of that like we mentioned. But the two choices that tied at 50%, Major League Baseball spring training got 3 votes. So that's 50%. And the other half is Redbird Arch Madness, got 50% or 3 votes. Now, the thing you don't know about this Twitter poll is I didn't select my thought yet. And I've been pondering it since we started this live stream. And I'm going to make my selection. It is not the two that tied, though, ironically enough. My choice, what I'm most excited about this week, is I'm going to go with, now I might have to go with, when I saw these results, it kind of changes my decision now. Right? I'll mention the one I was originally planning to go with. I was kind of on the fence with these two. Bears getting a new kicker is definitely one that I was really excited about, but that's more in the future. When we think about this week, same with the Bulls tango. So that's why I really like where the two votes ended up. But I'm going to have to go with Redbird Arch Madness as my choice of the four options in this Twitter poll for what I'm most excited about this week. Just as a Redbird alum, I'm still that student fan. That I went to St. Louis a few times. I saw those games where they lost by 20 or more to Wichita State a few years ago, and then a year ago, to Loyola went to their Final Four. So that, to me, is the most exciting thing this week. We appreciate all of the voters that casted their votes on the Twitter poll, and we're going to have more Twitter polls coming up in the future on live streams, maybe more interactive things. We are still going to be bringing that out to you. So we're getting near the latter part of the comment section, and a shout out goes to Blake Haas, who left the final comment of the first ever YouTube live stream in the history of Will Smith Quarter Special. It's not one Bears fans are going to like, though. He says, "Go, Pack, go." And he also believes the Cubs are kind of rough, like they don't have chemistry. The question, though, Mr. Haas, do you believe the chemistry isn't good in the pitching or in the hitting? We will cover that when you come on the show when we talk your Cardinals. So we covered a lot of Redbird sports. We covered a lot of Sox, Cubs, Bears, Bulls. If there's more you wanted to hear, along with the sports movie moments, tune into future episodes of Will's Fifth Quarter Special. For those of you that have never heard of this show and are first seeing it on this YouTube live stream on YouTube, we welcome you. We look forward to seeing what you bring to the show's table in terms of a listener base and the audience as well. So this is sadly so long from this YouTube live stream, but don't be sad. We will be doing an episode on the Redbird Sports Update, as I mentioned, tomorrow. That should be up by tomorrow night. We will have that up for all of you. Episode 28. We're going to put an episode 29 together later this week. We have a lot of exciting people we're going to try and bring in to the episode, bring in more guest appearances. I want to thank Tom Pappas, Brian Farlow, Blake Haas, and all of the great people that make up the Will's Fifth Quarter Special audience and family for tuning in to this YouTube live stream. So until next time, this is so long from the first ever YouTube live stream in the history of Will's Fifth Quarter Special, March 3rd, 2019. Hope the weather gets warmer for you out there, Chicagoland, or wherever you're at. Hopefully not Minnesota, where it's totally even freezing more out there, like negative temperatures in March. God, that's crazy. But stay warm. Spend time with your families. Have a good start to the week starting tomorrow on Monday. Enjoy the sports talk. Tune into the episodes. Watch this if you haven't seen it yet on the train to work, when you get to work, on your way home from work. Whenever you do it, we appreciate your support every step of the way. So until next time, to our next YouTube live stream that'll be announced on the next episode put together of Will's Fifth Quarter Special, I'm your host, Will Rocky Farlow, saying so long from the first YouTube live stream of Will's Fifth Quarter Special. When the fourth quarter buzzer sounds at the end of the sports game, keep tuning to us for your fifth quarter sports talk. I'm Will Farrell saying so long and good night.